Good morning and welcome to Saturday, March 15th meeting of TV Toastmasters Club 9523. To find out more about our club, you can log on to www.tvtoastmasters.com. I'd like to welcome my fellow TV Toastmaster members as well as our newest member, Ram Kapoor, and especially those looking in from home. Please log on and check us out and feel free to come join us at a meeting. We have a great meeting in store for you today, so I'm going to call it to order and now turn it over to our Toastmaster for the day, Mr. Steve Aaronholz.
Thank you, Michelle. As Michelle said, welcome everyone to our March Saturday meeting for TV Toastmasters. This program will be broadcast in April, and we hope you'll enjoy today's program. We have a full slate of speakers as well as table topics, so we're going to have an opportunity to participate in all the components of a Toastmaster meeting. We will start this morning with our word power. This is an opportunity to have us introduce a new word into our vocabulary. Our word power grammarian and counter for today will be Paul Wessels. He's going to be keeping track of some of the grammatical errors that we may use. If we use any crutches as a part of our speaking, crutches can be things like ahs and ums, repeats, restarts. If we have a particular word or phrase that we tend to repeat while we're thinking, it actually sensitizes us to some of the things that we do in the course of our speaking that by themselves, if they occur frequently enough, can become quite distracting. Help me welcome Paul Wessels to give us our word of the day. Paul.
Thank you, Steve. The word of the day, and again, like Steve was mentioning, we're going to try to use this word throughout the day when you're up here speaking. The word of the day today is instantaneous. Instantaneous. That's an adjective. And instantaneous means happening immediately. Another definition, done without delay. And to read it in a sentence here, we got almost instantaneous response from the company. So we're going to try to use instantaneous. I'm going to go ahead and leave it up here so that it will remind you to try to use instantaneous in your speech while you're up here today. So that is the word of the day, instantaneous. Steve?
Thank you, Paul. What an appropriate word of the day, because the next portion of our meeting, we are going to have an opportunity to see people engage in instantaneous speaking. Our table topics master, and this is the portion of our meeting where we will practice listening. Let me think. It's table topics, and so what we do is we're learning impromptu speaking. We learn to think on our feet and provide a response to a question that the participants are not going to have any idea what they'll be asked to respond to. Help me welcome our newest club member, Ram Kapoor, who is going to be our table topics master this morning. Ram?
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone. So, today the first question is, if death ceases to exist as we know it, and if we stop growing older than 35 years, how do you think this world will be as we know it? Would you like to answer the question, Paul?
Thank you. Thank you, Ram. If death ceased to exist and you only grow to the age of 35, wow, there'd be a lot more instantaneous, I believe, thinking, less long-term thinking. Maybe there would be more long-term thinking. People would be more into the moment, I would think. If you weren't going to die, there may be a whole take on religion that may change a lot more. If you don't grow old and you knew you weren't going to die, there may be some other things that you may not do that you would have done in the past. For example, mountain climbing. If I wasn't going to die, why would I take a chance to mountain climb? So you may actually take less risks if you weren't going to die. If you weren't going to die, That doesn't make sense either, because if you weren't going to die and you fell off, this is a very tough question. So I'm getting real stumped by this, or you're not going to die. So if you don't grow old, what would happen if you don't grow old? You wouldn't have to, for example, depend on your children to take care of you when you got old. So there may be less family dependency when you get older. It's a very tough question. So that is my response to what would happen if you didn't get old and you only turned to 35 and you weren't going to die. So very good.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
A very interesting answer by Paul. Some interesting ideas passed my mind while he was answering, like insurance industry would shut down. There would be expiry date on marriage certificates. So just a couple of thoughts over there. Okay, my next question for the day is, what is the most difficult thing in an ascending order among the three? Going to war, raising a family, or sitting in meditation for 8 hours every day? Would you like to answer? Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Tabletop Master. So what is the most difficulty order in ascending order? So that would be from the easiest to the most difficult. And the options were going to war, raising a family, and sitting in meditation for 8 hours. What a question to ponder. So my instantaneous response would be, I probably would start with the easiest being sitting in meditation for 8 hours. Now, granted, I've never meditated probably longer than 5 minutes. So I'm sure 8 hours would probably seem like an eternity, but I'm going to say that that would probably be the least challenging or least difficult, although it sounds like it would be difficult. Number 2, I'm going to go with raising a family because I haven't had to raise a family, so my guess is I would think it would be harder to go to war than to raise a family than to meditate. So that's going to be the order that I select. Now, I'll probably get a lot of smirks from those mothers out there and like, yeah, right, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into when you raise a family. But I think going to war is something that takes a physical and emotional, psychological toll on people, and I commend those who have the effort and the heart to do that for our country. So that's the order I'm going to pick. That's my instantaneous response.
Thank you, Michelle. I would like to add 2 cents to what Michelle said. If you look at the history, there have been so many wars fought. We have a bloody history, human history. Don't you agree? So looking at the history, I really don't think going to war is that difficult. Raising a good family is definitely second most difficult. And if people were sitting in meditation, there would be no war. So that would be third most. So that is my point of view. Okay, so I will go to the third question now. If I have to ask this question, everybody wants to live a blissful life. What is the secret to live a blissful life? Carol, would you like to answer?
Thank you, Ron. My instantaneous answer to living a blissful life, I wouldn't want to live a completely blissful life because you learn from your mistakes if you're willing to admit that you made a mistake. When you learn from it, then you can help others avoid making that same mistake. And blissful, this last week was not blissful for me. It was very stressful. And I learned, don't take other people's words for things. Find out yourself. Know what you believe, what you think for yourself. Growing up, you take your parents' views of everything. And to be blissful, I think, is to be content with living the hand that you've been dealt and making the best of it. Mr. Topics Master. And then you say you come back up and turn the control back to the president. And thank you, Ron, for that, just being a brand new member and coming and filling in for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Toastmaster, Steve, would you please come? Thank you.
Thank you, Ram.
Name an effective political leader in history who couldn't speak well.
I take pride in the word
There aren't any.
Because when it comes to a disease,
Freedom requires leadership, and leadership requires oratory. You have to speak to be heard.
I have a dream.
It's all about personal growth and guts.
Never give in. Never, never, never.
Our first speaker this morning is going to be giving a presentation of a speech that's prepared out of the Competent Communicator Manual. That is our initial manual, or the basic one, and most Toastmasters do work through it several times. She is going to be working on project number 8 out of that manual, which is addressing visual aids. This is where she will be working on how well she uses different things as a part of her speech to support the speech. The title of our speech is Finding Your Secret Motivator by Carol Cormelink, Distinguished Toastmaster. Finding Your Secret Motivator, Carol Cormelink.
My introduction. As you know, this is not an instantaneous speech. It is a prepared speech that I will be instantaneous in some of the things that I say. Finding your secret motivator. Have you found your secret motivator to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish? Or are you, like I have been wanting to have a better body, be healthier for 60 years. Every year for the last 60 years, this has been on my New Year's resolution. I said, I am tired of this gaining weight, losing weight. I've lost hundreds of pounds, the same 10, 20, 30 pounds over 60 years. And I said, has to stop. I'm not going to have it on my resolutions for 2015. And I refuse to diet. So this year, I'm working to find an eating plan, an action plan, a relaxation plan that will help me reach this goal and not have to do it ever again, because I will have the tools to know how to do this. And fortunately, I met someone who is a great visionary, and he's a gifted conceptual thinker, and he has become a great influence in my life. He's written over 14 books and he's world renowned. He's helped thousands of people, millions of people around the world. His name is Gary Ryan Blair. I was privileged to attend his seminar last month in Florida. Learned quite a bit more, and all of what he teaches and preaches has been tested, field tested. It works. It's successful. And the first thing that made a difference for me when I was listening to Gary Ryan Blair was how to set a goal. When I wanted to lose weight and someone said, well, how are you going to do that? I had no idea. I just wanted to lose weight. Well, you have to take action if you want to accomplish something. So he gave the challenge to write a 1, 3, 5 goal. The 1 is to have a clear, concise, time-bound goal. And I wanted to change my body's image forever, and I knew that dieting doesn't work. That's temporary. You stop a diet, go back to your same way of eating. I am going to learn this year how to eat that will accomplish losing pounds, inches, feeling better, being toned up. And so my goal, to have it time-bound, I had a secret motivator. The District 40 Spring Conference on May 2nd. You will see less of me on May 2nd. And I will be trimmed down and healthier by May 2nd. I don't get on a scale and weigh, because numbers on a scale, that's all they are. It doesn't tell, did you just drink several drinks of water before you got on a scale? You can get on a scale, see what the weight is, drink an 8-ounce glass of water, step back on a scale. Water's not fattening, but it is weight weight on your body. And so you'll be 8 ounces heavier. Well, that's very frustrating because you've just eaten well all week and now you are 8 ounces heavier. That's because you just drank an 8-ounce glass of water. So numbers on a scale don't mean anything. I'm not going to be on there. To stay on your program, you need to have 3 compelling whys. What's in it for me? Why do I want to reach this goal? Because many times, a week later, a month later, we forget. Our New Year's resolutions, they're all forgotten by the end of the month, probably. So my number 1 goal is to sleep my way to a better weight, because it's well known that people who get plenty of sleep, they make better decisions. You are stronger in your resolve to accomplish whatever you want. You have lower blood pressure, and sleep has also been shown. People who have more sleep, they lose more weight than people who have less sleep. And I get 2 to 3 hours. I was getting 2 to 3 hours, but thanks to my little jawbone here that measures my activity and how much sleep and activity I have gone from sleeping only 2 to 3 hours a night, although I still do that once in a while, but now I've gotten up to 4 or 5 hours a night. My goal is 6 hours, and I have even gotten in an 8-hour night on occasion. One of the reasons I can get by, I think, I don't know this scientifically, but one of the reasons I think I can get by with less sleep is because I'm a good, deep sleeper. When you're awakened out of a light sleep, you feel more rested. When you're awakened out of a deep sleep, you don't feel like you've had enough sleep for the evening. And fortunately, I wake out of a light sleep. And when I fall asleep, I have a deep sleep. Last night, I think I had 3 hours sleep, and most of it was deep sleep. And I'm going, I didn't get much sleep, but I had good deep sleep. So my second why compelling reason to get healthier is I want to have a toned body. I want to get rid of this muffin top and all that flab in the back. I want to get rid of all that flab. Because if you notice Gary Ryan Blair, he has no flab on him. He exercises. How do I do that? I don't go to the gym. I have the personal trainer come to my house, because if I went to the gym, I'd find a reason not to go, and I still have to pay for it. Having him come to my house, I do it whether I want to or not. And so I've been averaging, my goal is 10,000 steps a day. I have been averaging only 5,000 to 6,000 steps a day, but in the past 2 weeks, one time I reached that 10,000 goal, and one day I even reached 12,969 steps, which was a big surprise to me. So I'm learning to take a walk every day. I do it 3 times a day, 3 times a week when my trainer comes, but I'm not doing it every day. Now I have no excuse with the weather getting nicer. I can't say that, it's too bad out today. And my third compelling why, the reason that I want to have a lifetime success, I found out I have to remake this goal every day when I feel hungry, every moment. And you don't have to get hung up if you aren't as perfect as you think you want it to be, because within 5 minutes you'll be able to have a better choice. You'll be able to make a better choice. And so I've realized Gary Ryan Blair has a book called The 10 Commandments of Goal Setting. And number 2 is focus. And my niece tells me, hey, Carol, you're all over the place. You start one thing and then your mind shifts to something else and you're all over the place. Well, he's teaching me how to focus and focus on my goals of what I want. And one of the things that's helping me to focus, my new friend, when I have a hunger pang, first I take a drink of water. If I am really hungry, 20 minutes later or so, I'll have another pang, and I'll know that I'm really hungry and not really thirsty. I have a tendency toward dehydration. So those, what I think are hunger pangs, are really quests to quench my thirst. So that, my new friend is helping me, and my other new friend, Gary Ryan Blair, is helping me. And I just found another help, and this book is called The Mouth Trap. The butt stops here. So who would like to reach their goal and take some action. And my 5 action steps, I'm constantly revising because as I'm drifting along and doing things instantaneously that I can do the rest of my life, I'm changing them every couple of weeks because I found out I'm not losing 2 pounds a week by eating what I want, when I want, and eating less of it. So I'm finding that, well, 0.2 of a pound a week constantly forever will be good. 4.4 pounds that I lost this week, that's good. I get weighed once a week. So every 2 weeks I'm revising them. But think a minute about a goal in your life. Would you like to have some help to have a workbook and a book? Who would like to have this book? Who would like to have this book? Who would like to have this book?
I would.
Who would like to have this book? You have to take action. That's the point I wanted to get across.
Okay.
Thinking about it is not going to do the trick. You have to take action if you want to reach your goals, and you will find your secret motivator. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. Mr. Timer, if you would time a moment for us for the evaluator to complete their evaluation of Carol's speech, and we'll be back in a minute.
I'd like to begin tonight with a little joke. This guy, he's a farmer, and he says, "Hey, hello, sorry." But seriously, folks,
Speaking in public is no joke.
farmer says, doctor says, chicken says,
For help, call Toastmasters, the public speaking support group.
the chicken.
Welcome back. I now have the privilege of introducing our second speaker for today. Paul Wessels will be giving us a speech out of the Competent Communicator Manual. He is working on speech number 3 out of that manual, which is get to the point. And it deals with how you present your information to your audience as far as getting the point across that you want them to take with them after their speech is completed. The title of the speech is Instantaneous. Paul Wessels, Instantaneous.
Thank you, Steve. Instantaneous. Of course, I was the word topics person today, so I picked instantaneous. That is the name of my speech, and I'm going to talk about instantaneous communications, which is communicating instantaneously over long distance. So if you're not face-to-face with somebody, and I'm going to compare 2 types of the instantaneous communication. I'm going to look at the written communication, emails and texts, and I'm also going to look at verbal communication, which is the good old-fashioned phone call. Emails and texts. I love emails and texts. They give you several advantages, I think, over the phone. And the thing about emails and texts is that the emails and texts, what they do for you is they actually create an electronic paper trail. So what they'll do is they'll leave a paper trail. So if you say it, which is good and bad in certain cases, but the paper trail, the electronic paper trail is there forever. So you can refer to it forever. So that's one good thing about texting and emailing that I love. The next is the response. When you text and you email, your response doesn't have to be instantaneous. You can actually respond and think about what you're going to say in a text or an email. So that's great. You can think about what you're saying. It doesn't have to be instantaneous. And then finally, when you do respond, you can respond on your own schedule. With a phone call, typically the way it's used, you get interrupted a lot. So you don't get interrupted with a text or an email. That being said, I think there's times when you actually do need to actually make a phone call versus making a text or an email. I remember I sound old here, but I remember when before texting and email, you had phone. If you wanted to talk to somebody long distance, instantaneous, you had to pick up the phone. Phone was connected to the wall, then it became unconnected to the wall, became a cell phone. Small, you can put them in your pocket now. But the ironic thing about nowadays is that these phones are used to create the written form of instantaneous communications. People are using their phones to text more than they're actually making phone calls now. I'm saying there's certain situations where you may be able to, instead of whipping off that text, go ahead and make a phone call. What does a phone call get you? It gets you a couple things. One, it gets you tone. Tone is basically inflections in your voice, the way you pause. It adds a lot more color to the communication. So when you have tone, I think in certain cases you get that color and you'll get a lot more efficient communication. Where would you use tone? I'd like to say you would like to use tone if you're negotiating. So if you're negotiating, particularly on the sales side of things, you want to use the phone. You want to pick up the phone, you want to verbally communicate as opposed to doing a text or an email. So there's a certain case where you want to pick up that phone as opposed to an email. Second, spontaneity. If you want spontaneity, I feel like you need to make a phone call as opposed to texting or email. What does spontaneity get you? It gets you truth. You don't have time to think when you're actually talking, and so there's less chance of a calculated response. So if you want the truth, pick up the phone. Don't do an email or text. And then finally, connection. If you want to make a connection, a better connection, yes, you've got some action over here with texting and cute little texts and all that, but if you want to make a personal connection, there may be certain instances where you want to pick up the phone as opposed to email or text. So tone, spontaneity, and connection. So before you really instantaneously just get in and start typing things down, remember, you've got to remember the tools that are out there. Remember, if you feel like you are negotiating in a case where you may need some tone and color, you may want to pick up the phone. If you want some truthfulness, pick up the phone. If you want to make a connection, pick up the phone. So I say, think about it. Think of the situation that don't just instantly get out there, and it's becoming a big thing now where you're texting a lot. There may be cases where the good old-fashioned phone call is the better way to go. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Paul. We'll take another moment of silence for our evaluator to complete their evaluation of Paul's speech, and we'll be back in a moment.
All the education in the world won't help you get ahead in life if you can't express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.
Our third speaker that we will hear from this morning, I'm sorry, we actually have 4 for you today, is going to be giving us a speech from the Entertaining Speaker Advanced Manual. I'm really curious to hear the speech that we will have in a moment. Our speaker is Michelle Lewis. She is working on her Advanced Communicator Bronze. She's held a number of offices in our TV Toastmasters Club. She's currently our Vice President of Membership. Michelle's speech today will be The City of Sisterly Love. Michelle Lewis, City of Sisterly Love.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. A 5-hour flight? You didn't tell me that. I thought it was only 3. Those are the words that my sister exclaimed to me as we're driving to the airport for our weekend getaway to San Francisco. Oh no, what have I gotten myself into? Those are the words of my inner monologue. I had to go to San Francisco for a Friday business meeting, so I thought, why not stay over the weekend and explore the city by the bay? But no one likes to explore by themselves, so I asked my sister, do you want to go with me? And she said she was on board. We had never been on a trip, just the 2 of us, alone, without anyone else from our family. Maybe that's to shield each other from killing each other. But it had to be fun, right? Or at least memorable. So as we get to the airport, I go and I pull out her suitcase that kept coming. It was huge. So what came across my lips is, we're going away for 3 days. What could you possibly have in this suitcase? Well, I brought my own pillow. I can't use a hotel pillow. That's gross. Are you kidding me? Are we related? That was my inner monologue again. So as we're working our way to the gate, she reminds me, I hate to fly. I can't sit for long durations, and I don't do well with turbulence. Can I please be upgraded? Inner monologue again. So we board the plane. We're walking our way back to the seats. So we're about halfway back in the plane. She whips out a pack of sanitizing wipes. And she begins to thoroughly wipe down the headrest, the seat cushion, the armrest, the tray, all along holding up the entire line of people ready to anxiously take off. I was slightly embarrassed. But we survived our 5-hour flight, including the 1-hour layover, or the 1-hour delay on the runway in Cincinnati. All to be welcomed by 3-day forecast of rain. We're going to San Francisco. It had been sunny and 70 the week before. They had actually been experiencing a drought, so they were really excited about the rain. Just in time for our trip. 60% when we landed, 80% on Friday, 100% on the day that I planned our exploration of the city by foot. This might be a long trip. As you can probably pick up on, my sister and I are a little bit different. In fact, we don't even look alike. My sister is very regimented. She likes her routines. She's very organized, what I refer to as a neat freak. And she's a bit of a germaphobe, obviously. Hence why that night, and every night there, we were in bed by 10. We got up early to get a workout in. She had neatly organized her toiletries in the corner of the sink. Mine were haphazardly everywhere else over the sink. And the one that got me the most, I wasn't allowed to flush the toilet with the lid up in case particles would land on her toothbrush. I'm not even going to share with you what my inner monologue said when I learned that one. But to my surprise, she had told me, you plan what we're going to do. I'm going to leave that up to you. You've been here before. You know what's good to see. Was my regimented sister actually allowing me to do this? Maybe getting her away from the kids and the husband for a couple of days allowed her to be a bit more carefree. We had some fantastic meals, did some wonderful shopping. We did all the fun touristy things. We saw Union Square, Chinatown, Fisherman's Wharf. But what sticks with me the most is we had some really good conversations that surprised me. We talked about our family, we reminisced, we had some deep relationship conversations, and I felt a bond that I never realized I actually had with my sister. We even had some really fun moments where we couldn't stop laughing. In fact, one evening on the way back from dinner, we see this concrete monument of a monster head, and I said to her, you gotta take a picture of that. She said, okay. I said, jump up on top of it. So she's up on top of it. All of a sudden, the museum security over the loudspeaker, get down from the exhibit. We didn't realize we were on top of a museum exhibit. So like two 12-year-old boys, we ran and hid and started giggling and walked the whole way home. That's a memory, right? So getting up early, going to bed early on your vacation, not my thing. But it was nice not being jet-lagged when we got home. Wiping down the seat with sanitizing wipe, I wouldn't have thought of it, but they were actually kind of filthy, and I'm kind of glad she did it. The suitcase. How else would we have gotten home everything we bought on that trip? Wasn't a bad idea. I can't really relate or explain the pillow or the toothbrush thing, but that's my sister. And as I went through the trip and I sat on the plane on the way home, my inner monologue had a change of heart. I looked over at her and I thought, I'm glad we're sisters. I'd like to leave off with a quote by Lisa Sunshine. If you can't understand why a woman loves her sister dearly, but could want to wring her neck at the same time, you are probably an only child. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll have another minute of silence for Michelle's evaluator to complete their evaluation. We'll be back momentarily.
Thank you very much. And now for our next speaker, Stanley Glitchner.
Speaking in public doesn't have to be a death sentence. At Toastmasters, we can help you overcome your fears.
Welcome back. Our final speaker that we are going to be hearing from today is going to be doing a specialty speech. Michael Washington, Distinguished Toastmaster, is going to be giving us a speech entitled Office Politics. Office Politics, Michael Washington.
Glad you guys not recording this. See, now you got to start over. You're not timing me, are you?
You want me to?
Oh, okay. No, you don't have to time me. No, I'm good. It may be a little longer. So, okay, well, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. There's a guy. He completed a program. It's called the 7 Highly Effective People. Does anyone recall that person? Yeah. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's it, Stephen Covey. And he talked about something called the 99 is the key to the 1. He said to be loyal in the presence of those people in front of you. And he went on to say, make deposits in front of those people in your presence. And he went on to say that how you treat the 1 in your presence, it may show a sign of how you would treat other people. And he said the key to that is the 99 is the 1. And eventually, everyone will be a 1. Now, the most common problem that I want to discuss with you right now is something called office politics. Every person working deals with the problem. If it's your own business, company, nonprofit organization, everybody deals with office politics. Some people will on the first day, weeks, months, could be a year, even when you get your paychecks. So, but yeah, the source of all my information comes from 7 sources. One is Max Mesmer. He's the CEO of Robert Half International Staffing Firm, and Tom Lowry. He wrote a book about surviving office politics. And then he talked with a communication expert. Her name is Cheryl Connor. After they talked, she put an article in the Forbes magazine about office politics. Now, the reason I'm talking about office politics is because people say there's at least one thing that you have to deal with on your job, in a company, once again, in an organization, any group setting of people. That one thing, what is it? That little tension, that little stress, what is that one thing? You know, how do you look at that one thing? How does it make you feel? There's someone named Maya Angelou. She gave a quote. She said that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you've done, but people will always remember how you made them feel. There are some good things and some bad things about office politics. First, office politics, it causes a natural feeling among men and among women. It's natural. You can't control it. You know, we all have a slight less amount of trust. And when I researched this more, somehow it related to jealousy. I couldn't figure out how does some jealousy tie into less trust. I couldn't see the similarity or the connection there, but somehow we all have it. It's just a natural part of being a human being. And that led me to something called reputation shaper. Now, a reputation shaper, I define as someone who tries to make you feel less than your very best. And then I went into something called a blamer. And that's a person who looks for any slight mistake, any type of slip up, and they'll make it bigger than what it really is. And with that being said, that means, hey, we all are not perfect. We all make mistakes. You know, even Albert Einstein, he had a quote. He said, if you haven't made a mistake, you haven't tried anything new. I really like that. And then Bill Cosby, he had a quote. He said, in order to succeed, the amount of desire for success must be greater than your fear of failure. Then Jim Rohn, he said, success is not to be pursued. It's to be attracted to the person you are to become. So how does that affect everybody? How does that affect people in general? That brings me to Bill Gentry, Gene Britton. They're affiliated with Forbes magazine. And they talked about a communications greatest secret weapon. So what is that? You know, people or situations that we're involved in that may cause an over-the-top emotional reaction. Something that causes a brash reaction. So, is it the result you're looking for? Was it the outcome that you expected? With more research, I found out that 50% of people, the Robert Half International Staffing Firm, they did a study and they said 50% of people who wanted to get ahead had to understand more about office politics. You have to apply office politics. Now, April Dykeman, she's a communication writer, a business, she's a ghostwriter, and she gave some positive tips about office politics. She said, work on credibility. She said, if you make a promise, keep that promise, follow through on that promise. She also said, if you make a mistake, fix it fast. And then Mesmer's approach. He talked about being professional, being positive, being discreet, reshape, reframe what you say and what you do to get along with your coworkers. If you have your own business, an organization, nonprofit organization, whatever the case may be, any group setting that you may be involved in. And it leads to another quote that I really like. I'm saying a lot of quotes, but I like quotes. they're inspirational. Someone named Lou Holtz, he said that it's not his job to motivate people because people bring extra motivation to a program, to a system. But he said it's not his job to demotivate people either. Which brings us back to where we started, Steve Colvin. Steve Colvin, he talked about thinking win-win. The win-win approach allows us to sometimes step aside with our own techniques and let others use their own initiative. That can be a hard thing to do, especially when it comes to trying to use the win-win approach. But on the other hand, when someone feels like they're losing, that's when reputation shakes. That's when blame starts. That's when the survival mode, it kicks in. But with that being said, in closing, whatever the group said it may be, whatever the company is, the organization, if it's your own organization, you're going to have goals that are set. But with the win-win approach, using that would allow everyone who's involved with sales, services, products to make progress, some to make a quantum leap by using the win-win approach. But when it's crystal clear that goals cannot be reached, instead of adjusting the goals, adjust the process. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
What future do you envision for yourself? What dreams do you have? If you want your dreams to come true, you must have confidence in yourself and your abilities. A Toastmasters Club can help you build that confidence. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters shows you how to express yourself clearly and effectively. Make your dreams a reality. Join a Toastmasters Club.
So I am going to begin introducing my evaluation team that will be giving us some feedback on the individual speeches that you have heard today. The evaluator for our first speech, Finding Your Secret Motivator by Carol Cormalank, will be Michelle Lewis. And so I'd like to call Michelle up here. Michelle?
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Carol worked on, thank you, Carol. I want to say what a great speech. It was an instantaneous great speech. Carol had project number 8, Get Comfortable with Visual Aids, and her objectives were to select visual aids that are appropriate for your message and the audience, and to use visual aids correctly with ease and confidence. So Carol had a very interesting topic, finding your secret motivator, and I've heard Carol reference Gary Ryan Blair before. I know you're a big fan, but you did a fantastic job from the get-go. You showed us a photograph of him before you even revealed his name, and you let us get a good view of who this is. I didn't know who he was, but now I know what he looks like, and you did a really good job of holding your visual aids up steadily and for a long duration of time. So that's really important with the visual aids. You had 7 different visual aids, which was great. So you had the photo, the worksheet, how to set a goal, your jawbone. I don't know if you intended for that to be a visual aid, but it was. You used your 10 commandments of goal settings, your water bottle, the mousetrap book, and then at the very end you held up the packet. So you had 7 different visual aids, but you did a really good job of not making it seem overwhelming, because in 5 to 7 minutes, 7 visual aids could be a lot. But you weren't moving too quickly, and you held them all steadily. So good job on that. As far as an area of improvement, one thing from my view, you're a short person, and you can't change that, and you've got this tall lectern in front of you. I could see the visual aid fine, but there were times where I couldn't see Carol. So it's just understanding your setup. I'm sure it was fine on the cameras, but just from my angle, it was a little tough to see. And the jawbone, when you showed it, you kind of showed it quickly, so I don't know if it was even intended to be a visual aid, but if it would have been, you could have maybe held it up longer for a little bit more period of time. But great content. Carol, you always speak with such ease, and you don't seem rehearsed, meaning you sound like you're just kind of speaking from the heart, which is very enjoyable. I like how you asked a question, and I love how you closed with the challenge, and you didn't get the reaction you wanted the first time, and you continued to ask until you had someone come up to take action, which was a really interesting and cool way to end a speech. So fantastic job, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Michelle. As you may have noticed, Michelle used the evaluation process that we frequently use in Toastmasters, where she identified the strengths of the speaker, she identified some growth areas that can be considered for future speeches as far as improving the speeches, and then she closes with some reaffirmation of the speech and the quality of the presentation that we heard. Our second evaluator this morning will be giving us her assessment of Paul Wessel's speech, Instantaneous. Help me welcome Carol Cormelink. Carol?
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, Toastmasters, and our viewing audience at home, and especially Paul. I loved your speech, Paul, on Instantaneous. And I know it was not instantaneous. You were ready, even though you gave it instantaneously. You didn't know until you got here that you were going to be doing that. I liked your choice of the topic, and your speech asked for a general overall purpose and then the specific. And I think that your overall purpose was to give us an informative speech. It was not, I wouldn't say that it had been entertaining or well, maybe inspiring a little bit, but I thought informing was the main general purpose, and that the specific purpose was reinforced what I believe in, to pick up the phone. And if you want instant contact, that don't rely on the text messaging and doing things email, that when you talk to someone over the phone, and it is instantaneous. You don't know how many times I've reread my emails before I sent them. You don't have that opportunity when you speak. I think that all your 3 points supported the specific purpose of your speech, and that you did achieve. For me, I always pick up the phone. I can do in one phone call what would take 4 or 5 emails to do. And I didn't see any notes. That's great. And I thought, wow, from the first time you were up here, because when you first came a couple years ago, you were really rocking back and forth and had lots of ums and ahs. You were so confident and poised. You exuded confidence up here. And had I asked you to do anything differently that may have made it more, kept more with me, would maybe give us a memorable acronym like PUP. Pick up the phone. PUP. And I like that you emphasize my philosophy, direct contact, picking up the phone will save tons of time. Mr. General Evaluator. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Carol. The next evaluator that we are going to hear from will be Paul Wessels, and he will be giving us his evaluation of Michelle Lewis's speech, City of Sisterly Love. Help me welcome Paul.
Thank you, Steve. And Michelle, I'm here to evaluate Michelle's speech, and it comes from the Entertaining Speaker series, the first project, and the goal is to give a speech that's entertaining from a personal experience, and it was definitely a personal experience, and it was definitely entertaining, I have to say. The other main goal is to have some maximum impact, try to present maximum impact, and I think it did for me anyway. It was not just an entertaining speech, just rolling with jokes. It had a couple different meanings in here. It was personal to her, and if you have a brother and sister, it becomes personal to you. I happen to have 5 brothers and sisters, and they all have their own little foibles and different things, but it was very personal, so it definitely had impact to me. So that was the overall speech. At the beginning, it says, have a nice dramatic introduction. And she did that with the 5-hour flight versus 3-hour flight. So she came in here with a nice opening. The body, it says have some general direction with respect to the body. And she did, and it was great because she had a couple different themes going on. She's telling the story about this trip that she's taken with her sister, but she's also talking about the inner dialogue. So she had my inner dialogue and what was actually happening. So it's a nice, well-written, well-thought-out story. So even though she may have written it just recently, it was a very organized speech, too. So I thought it was great. Just body language, too. I just had a couple notes on body language. Pray for an upgrade. She had a couple, what was it, slightly impressed. Some other things, big bag, big. So she was up here moving a lot of different expressions, verbally and just body language expressions. So that was really good. And what I liked about it is she started out with the foibles, or just kind of how my sister and how bad it is, and just the whole thing. It's like a coin. It's the same. She flipped it at the end to how really great it really was, And it's like that with our brothers and sisters. You're bickering with them. You remember if you lived in the same bedroom with them, all that. But nowadays you get together, and it just really hit home to me. So it was a great story. Flowed really well. You could almost like picture it, because you could picture everybody pictured going on vacation. So a lot of things going on here. I thought it was very entertaining and well done, intelligently well done. Wiping off the toilet, just all these little things that go into a good, entertaining speech. So in the end, it was a great ending because she tied a quote. Everybody likes quotes. Michael Washington likes quotes. She brought a quote in, and it was a perfect quote to summarize the whole story. It's almost like, I don't know if you started with the quote and went backwards. It's almost as if she started with that quote and went backwards and posted that story. It was a perfect quote. So it was a great ending also. The only improvement, I may have been trying to write things, and we had a lot to do in the beginning. I was trying to figure out what with the whole flight thing coming in. I thought it took me just a second to gather and get going into the conversation. I thought, well, maybe if she mentioned my sister, that would have honed me in on, this is going to be a story about her sister as opposed to a flight. I'm thinking, is she going? Now I know. So that's the only improvement I think I would put on this speech. To me, it was fantastic, well written. It taught us something. It was personable. It was entertaining. It did everything that this manual, I think, even though the manual is a little wet here, it looks like it got a little wet. That's entertaining in itself. It did everything this manual wanted you to do, and it did a lot for me. So I thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to many more of these. You've got to continue with this manual because you're very entertaining and informative at the same time. Thank you, Michelle.
And at this point, I am going to relinquish my roles as Toastmaster and General Evaluator back to our presiding officer, Michelle Lewis. Michelle?
Thank you, Steve. As Steve mentioned, we would love for you to join us in the studio. We meet the first Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. and the third Saturday of the month at 9 a.m. at 7855 Mile Road, the Anderson Community Television Studio. So please, to find out more details, you can log on to www.tvtoastmasters.com. This concludes our Saturday, March 15th meeting of Club 9553.